we'll start with this, our expanded coverage of this past weekend's Day of Reckoning card. What was a bit of a surprise for me, the Agit Kabayel versus Arslanbek Makhmudov battle of the unbeatens at heavyweight.
I didn't think Makhmudov would knock him out.
Having seen Arslanbek Makhmudov in action a couple of times, I didn't think he could knock out Agit Kabayel. His limited arsenal of punches, I figured he could probably win a decision behind being the aggressor, behind pushing the envelope. Whereas the least likely outcome I expected was Agit Kabayel not only winning, but winning by way of knockout. Agit Kabayel is not known as a power guy, a knockout merchant. I've seen him in action several times throughout the years. He has his virtues, he has his strengths, but power did not seem to be one among them. No movement, agility, speed, and good combinations mid-range to inside were what Agit Kabayel brought to the table, but not concussive power. I didn't really know him for that.
He exposed Makhmudov.
You get a look at Makhmudov, and he's like something out of a Bond movie. He looks like a Bond villain. Physically imposing guy, statuesque guy, very strong. He is strong, albeit limited.
And he got exposed.
You often hear that word, exposed, in a sport of boxing, oftentimes out of context, oftentimes it's overused, and what it really means to expose something is to reveal what has otherwise not been revealed, what was not known up until that moment. And the way that Agit Kabayel exposed Arslanbek Makhmudov is, this guy don't take the best shot, he don't take the best punch, especially not to the body.
First 2 rounds of the fight went the way that I thought they would. Arslanbek Makhmudov is trying to pour it on and pour it on thick, chasing this guy around the ring, trying to land big shots, big power shots.
And Agit is hanging tough. He's doing what he does. He's blocking shots, moving around, getting under and around punches, using the ring, because that's what he's got. He's got good feet. He's got good movement, good agility for a man his size, for a guy at heavyweight.
He can move. But man alive, was I surprised in the 3rd round. He starts catching Makhmudov coming in with counter rights, overhand rights, that clearly rattled Arslanbek Makhmudov's cage. They hurt him.
Agit Kabayel snapping this guy's head back, rocks him at least 2 times in the 3rd round with big right hands that sent him careening into the ropes. And like I said, Agit Kabayel, at least up until that point, he didn't have the look of a very strong puncher, a concussive puncher, but the way he was laying into Arslanbek Makhmudov,
and that he could actually hurt him,
surprised me. That Agit Kabayel had better counters and combinations, better shot selection than Arslanbek Makhmudov, that much I knew already. But that he actually had the power to hurt Makhmudov, yeah, that caught me off guard, and it caught Arslanbek Makhmudov off guard as well, which is why it rattled his cage.
Those big right hands, you now have to question the durability and the fitness of Arslanbek Makhmudov, who seemed tired just after 3 rounds.
He unraveled rather quickly. That could be a byproduct of Agit Kabayel being better than everybody thought he was, better than people anticipated, or that could be a byproduct of Arslanbek Makhmudov not getting a full camp in for this fight and perhaps underestimating his quarry, his opponent, because it's almost like people don't realize the Day of Reckoning card was made on short notice. It was impromptu.
Maybe that's what it was.
Though I don't want to make excuses for him, because if it was impromptu for everybody on the show, that means it was impromptu for Agit Kabayel the same way it was impromptu for Arslanbek Makhmudov. So it really is no excuse. You just don't figure that a guy with that frame, a guy that size,
not as durable as I thought he was,
ended up getting stopped by Agit Kabayel in, what was it, the 4th round? Not the result I expected, not the result I predicted, but it was a thoroughly entertaining fight while it lasted. And now Agit Kabayel, the 2-time EBU champion, Agit Kabayel, he has arrived.
Alhamdulillah.
World's gotten a good look at him, and they've got to like what they see, because the way he deconstructed the bigger, what's supposed to be the bigger, stronger man, the more durable fighter, the way he deconstructed Arslanbek Makhmudov, it really was a thing of beauty.
Maybe they bring him back next year to fight Andy Ruiz or Daniel Dubois.
Frankie Sanchez held up his end of the bargain earlier in the show. Maybe they bring back Agit Kabayel to fight him. They can find use for Agit Kabayel.
Been flying under the radar for years. At least 2 times by my count, he was attached to a potential Tyson Fury fight that didn't materialize. The latest was in late 2020.
Back when Fury was talking about skipping out on a Wilder trilogy, skipping out on fighting him again, they were talking about bringing him back late that year against Agit Kabayel, but the fight never materialized. What could have been his big break, but eventually he found it. He made a splash on the day of reckoning, proving that he is a force to be reckoned with. Congratulations to Agit Kabayel. We then come to the WBA light heavyweight title fight between Dmitry Bivol, the champion, and Lyndon Arthur, the challenger. No surprises here. I said this fight would go the distance, and it did, though not for the reasons I initially thought. I thought this fight would have the look of the Craig Richards fight that Dmitry Bivol had something like 2 years ago. I thought this was going to be a slow and controlled fight, but Dmitry, he actually got off to a faster and more aggressive start than I thought he would, taking it to Lyndon Arthur straight away.
Because Dmitry Bivol hadn't boxed in a year, I figured he would ease into it, take his time.
It's not what he did. He hit the ground running on Lyndon Arthur, taking it to him right away, and it became very obvious very quickly that Lyndon wasn't really there to fight, he was there to survive.
And he's a cerebral boxer anyway.
Opposite the ring, Dmitry Bivol or somebody else, what Lyndon Arthur's gonna do is stay behind his jab, move around, pick his spots. He's not an artillery fighter.
He's a pure boxer, and pure boxers, they don't take many chances as it is, much less a pure boxer that's there to survive. He's just there to not get knocked out.
The story of the fight was that each round was similar to the last, and I couldn't find a single round to give Lyndon Arthur in this thing, as Dmitry Bivol was doing all the work, and Lyndon Arthur's just moving from one end of the ring to the other, staying on the balls of his feet, catching shots, trying not to get hit clean, trying to hang tough.
And he lasted.
Though not before taking a knee in the championship rounds. I believe that was the championship rounds, either round 11, somewhere around there.
It was a dominant showing for Dmitry. It really was a lopsided affair, and as stated, I couldn't find a single round to give Lyndon Arthur, but the performance, at least to some, it left some people wanting that Dmitry, having thrown as many punches and having landed as many punches as he did, why couldn't he stop the guy?
Because of what I told you. Lyndon wasn't fighting the fight, he was fighting to survive. He was essentially fighting a negative fight, circling away from Dmitry Bivol, away from the action as much as he could, and when he wasn't circling away, he was catching shots, but not trying for very many shots. So it's hard to catch him in between, hard to catch him with a good counter. That might put him out.
You have to remember, Dmitry Bivol's one of the most skilled guys around, but he's already not the biggest puncher, not at light heavyweight. He's not known for power, he's known for speed, accuracy, shot selection, ring savvy, ring IQ, and all that jazz. But he's not a power guy.
It's not saying he's pillow-fisted, that's saying that he's not really a knockout merchant. Post-fight, we hear about some interest from the Saudis in making a fight between Dmitry Bivol and former IBF cruiserweight champion Jai Opetaia, what seems like a very odd pairing.
He fought on that same show, finished Ellis Zorro in the very first round,
scoring a late entry into the Knockout of the Year candidates for this year as he dispatched another unbeaten Brit, Ellis Zorro, inside the opening stanza after pummeling Jordan Thompson in 4 rounds back in September. Later in the night, pound-for-pound star Dmitry Bivol added the IBO strap, Lyndon Arthur's IBO strap, to his WBA light heavyweight title with a 12-round, 120 over 107 shutout win over Manchester's Lyndon Arthur. Both Opetaia and Bivol are considered the #1 fighters in their respective divisions, and Turki Al-Sheikh, the chairman of General Authority for Entertainment, wants to match them against each other.
I think Dmitry Bivol's great, very skilled guy, solid resume at light heavyweight, but he ain't the #1 guy at that weight.
That would have to be Artur Beterbiev, until further notice. The Ring Magazine lineal unified champion at this weight. In any event, Turki Al-Sheikh asked me, let's make the fight against Opetaia. Bivol told Boxing King Media, to be honest, I told him, I want to do everything in my weight division, and then maybe I will move up. I'm focusing on my weight division. He's focusing on a fight with the winner of Beterbiev versus Smith, which is right around the corner.
If Dmitry Bivol ends up facing the winner of that fight, and he wins that fight, then of course I could see him potentially moving up to cruiserweight. But there are concerns because Dmitry Bivol, he's not the biggest light heavyweight as far as light heavyweights go, and I just told you, he's not the biggest puncher either. Does he have what it takes to box with the big boys up there at cruiser, which is really just a nose hair away from heavy?
He hasn't settled affairs at light heavy, not yet.
So after the fight, because he wasn't able to knock Lyndon Arthur out, people are starting to doubt his ability to win a fight with Artur Beterbiev.
I understand those queries. I understand those concerns because Artur Beterbiev, in many ways, he's the puncher, the destructive puncher that Dmitry Bivol isn't. But Dmitry Bivol, he doesn't win fights through strength of arms. And comparatively, he's a younger man with fresher reflexes, a fresher set of legs than Artur Beterbiev. We have to see how that Callum Smith fight goes, because even if Artur wins and stays champion, that doesn't mean he won't get touched up. That doesn't mean he won't get hit. Over the years, as destructive as Artur is, he's proven himself to be an injury-prone fighter. An injury-prone fighter that isn't getting any younger.
Or any faster.
The hope is that Artur can have that fight with Callum and win that fight with Callum, coming away from it relatively unscathed, so that he can go right into the fight with Dmitry Bivol straight away.
But how does Dmitry beat a destructive puncher like that? He couldn't knock out Lyndon Arthur.
Well, you have to remember that Lyndon Arthur was moving away from Dmitry, essentially moving away from the action, whereas Artur being a pressure fighter, he's going to be moving towards it. So the forward momentum of Artur, coupled with the speed and counters of Dmitry Bivol, that will create more damaging shots on what is an older fighter.
Styles make fights. And a guy that's moving away from the shots, well, that takes something off the punch because you're moving away from it. But if you're moving towards it and you get caught coming in, you get caught hard.
Let's not act like Artur Beterbiev's never hit the deck before, because he has. Jeff Page sent him to the canvas. Callum Johnson sent him to the canvas. And if he's not careful, if he gets caught by Dmitry coming in, Dmitry could send him to the canvas, as strange as that might sound. It's all about Artur's forward momentum.
It's not even saying Dimitri's a lock to win so much as that's his best bet, that's his best chance, and that could happen. Artur winning the fight is just as palpable.
So far, nobody's been able to go the distance with this guy. The guy hits hard. So I don't write off his chances. It's a very close fight. It's a tough fight to call, but I think Dimitri's speed and reflexes and movement, that'll make the difference. Before it becomes about Dmitry Bivol in a fight with a former cruiserweight champion, before it becomes about Dmitry Bivol and Jai Opetaia, let's see Dmitry Bivol versus Artur Beterbiev first. Just in keeping with the theme of all this past weekend's action, former Showtime Sports president Stefan Espinoza reacted to the card by saying, "Entertaining card this afternoon, but it's a shame that the scheduled date drastically limited U.S. awareness due to holiday, competing NFL, doubleheader, and CFB 2-day is. At best, a challenging pay-per-view date. Would have been much bigger on almost any other date. Opportunity squandered." To which a Twitter user that goes by the name VVS said, "The world is not USA, my bro." To which Stefan responded, "LOL, I literally said the US isn't top priority. Reading is fundamental." Well, anybody who read through Stefan's initial comment,
that's what he's bellyaching about. That the US wasn't made more of a priority given when they decided to do the card as well as what time.
Basically saying that based on when they decided to do it, it limited U.S. awareness. But I don't think the people in Saudi Arabia were all that concerned with an American audience to begin with, when you consider that it was Anthony Joshua they had headlining the show. Not Jarrell Miller, a Deontay Wilder, not an American fighter. They had a British fighter headlining the show. And then when you consider the time zones, well, the time of the show accommodated a UK audience more than an American one. And why would they try to accommodate an American audience anyway? Deontay Wilder, who fought on that same show in the co-main event, he was on pay-per-view late last year, and the Americans didn't buy it. The Americans didn't care. For all this hullabaloo about Wilder on social media, in the real world, where you need real money and real fans to move the needle, he didn't.
So, of course, when putting together the show, the Saudis didn't prioritize an American audience, because the American audience, when it comes to boxing, it's not what it used to be. The American dollar, as it were, it's not as strong as it was.
Stefan characterized it as a quote-unquote missed opportunity, but a missed opportunity to do what? To prioritize a bunch of people that likely won't buy the fight anyway? Prioritize the American market over the British one? It seems to me that Stefan is greatly lacking tact and situational awareness when making suggestions like this one, as any suggestions from him are tainted. You're the guy that helped drive Showtime Boxing into the ground. After 37 years, it was on your watch, Paramount, pulled the plug. While you were Showtime Sports president, what decisions you made or whatever you allowed to go on while you were there. Thus, any suggestions from Stefan?
Yeah, let's listen to Stefan and all of his bright ideas.
First thing I thought to myself when I saw this was, if Stefan knew anything about anything, he'd still have a job at Showtime. If Stefan knew anything about anything, he wouldn't have run Showtime Boxing into the ground. When I first saw this, my initial interpretation of it was Stefan Espinoza shading the event.
It's what it felt like he was doing. Yeah. We got Crawford versus Spence on Showtime this year.
Yeah.
And we got Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis, Canelo versus Charlo. But this card, this past weekend's card, was a more solid card all around, all the way through.
It wasn't just the main event that you were paying for. It was for the card in its entirety and all the fighters in it, as opposed to what you were getting on Showtime. You get a main event and a bunch of forgettable fights on the undercard, whereas this card, it was good fight after good fight after good fight in sequence.
For less than you guys are charging.
By a pay-per-view on Showtime, what you're really paying for is a main event and not much else, and not every main event is pay-per-view worthy anyway. Benavidez versus Plant, Benavidez versus Andre, Davis versus Hector Garcia.
$80 for that stuff.
$80 at a time for every single one of those pay-per-views. I'll tell you that the biggest crock of shit in boxing right now is what a fantastic year Showtime had. The reality of it is, you waited until the 5th and final year of a 5-year deal to finally start putting on meaningful fights that might move the needle. And by then, it was too little and too late. Too late for Paramount. They'd had quite enough.
So spare us your suggestions, Stefan.
But raising U.S. awareness for the card and a U.S. audience, I mean, if you knew what the audience here wanted, you would have drawn more eyes to the Showtime platform. That's why you got the boot, because you waited too long to start doing that.
Making fights that a U.S. audience would be interested in.
It's the arrogance of it that gets me, that Stefan still thinks he's in any position to talk based on the success that he used to have with Floyd Mayweather. The Mayweather era is over.